Welcome to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast. I'm Danielle Van, a cognitive behavioral therapist, life coach, meditation teacher, and author. And this is your go-to show for a powerful blueprint to personal growth and empowerment, where we're digging into the 5 master areas of your life: emotional, mental, physical, spiritual, and financial health and well-being. We're combining Eastern and Western medicine with real, raw, and unapologetic conversations to shake up your mindset, elevate your life, and help you create the best version of yourself. If you've ever wondered why love feels so hard, why you're attracted to the wrong people, or why you continue to repeat the same painful dynamics, you're not alone. And guess what? You're also not broken. It comes down to hidden patterns, limiting beliefs, emotional wounds, and subconscious beliefs. Today, we're taking a deep dive with a love expert as to how to identify love blocks, what to do if you find them, and how to create the relationship that you've always wanted. So let's not waste another second. The Get Your Life Together Girl podcast starts right now. All right, ladies, as we continue our journey into really self-exploration, getting to those spaces of our 5 masters: mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and financial. One big thing that we need to dive into is our connection, our relationships. And whether we know it or not, there are some hidden love patterns, and we are going to break them all down today. Sanaya, I'm so glad that you're here with me. I want you to give a little bit of information about who you are, introduce yourself, and let's break down your area of expertise, because I know you have some big understandings of how we can best have relationships in a way that suits us.
Thank you so much, Danielle. Thank you for having me, and thank you for allowing me to speak about this very, very important topic.
Yeah.
Especially because women come to me all the time telling me, Sanaya, why do I experience the same thing
Mm,
in my relationship over and over again? It's like I'm
mhm.
dating the same guy,
Yeah.
in every relationship, or it always ends the same bad way. So why is this happening? And
Right.
really, what I do is I'm a relationship reinvention coach.
Mm,
I help women who are successful, they're smart, they've got everything working for them in their life,
mhm.
but their relationships are kind of a mess.
Yeah.
That's where they feel, stuck. Things are just not going the way they want it to. And they often feel like, they've gotten ahead in every aspect of their life at the cost of their relationships. So I do
Mhm.
coach women to go from single to in a relationship for life. I also work with women who are struggling with their current relationship. They might be in a relationship and it's just going downhill. So I work with them on that. And
Mm.
most importantly, I am a big advocate of self love, coaching women how to really love themselves as the foundation for every other relationship in their life.
Mhm. We
Okay?
talk a lot about that here. Let's talk about that for just a second, about self-love first, right? Because again, it's kind of cliche at this point where we say you have to love yourself first before you can have a great relationship. And a lot of people will say, but I really don't love myself, but I'm having a relationship that's pretty good. And I say pretty good's not enough, right? You need to be having a
Yeah.
relationship that feels expansive and there's connection. And it's hard to do that if we don't have that foundation of self-love. So, can you break down in your perspective what that looks like and kind of some of the factors that we need in place in order to get into those spaces of really good connection?
Yeah, to do that, I'll draw from my own story. So
Mm,
when I was single, Danielle, I kept looking for this, connection and love outside of me. I kept thinking somebody else would make me feel good about myself.
yeah.
There would be somebody to support me, somebody to get my back, somebody
Mhm.
to hold my hand when I needed it most. And so the focus was always outside of me because within me, I didn't feel good. I didn't feel enough.
Right.
I didn't feel like, I wanted to spend time with myself alone. I wasn't great company for myself. So I was always
Right.
seeking somebody else to do that for me. And in every relationship, it always started out pretty well. I did date people for sometimes, years, but it would always show up when things got tough in the relationship. So when
Mm-hmm.
there was conflict, when there were, arguments, when there were expectations that didn't get
Mm-hmm.
met. So I would constantly face situations where I felt either unloved by the other person, not respected,
Yeah.
betrayed. All these negative emotions would show up in situations that I would experience with my partners. And I
Mm-hmm.
would always think it's their fault.
Yeah.
And I'm always trying to fix them, thinking they're the problem.
Right.
And of course, anytime you're in a relationship and you try to fix the other person, it
Yeah.
never works out, right? It always
Never.
backfires. And in the end, I was left with my own broken heart. And all I wanted to do was
Mm.
go on to the next person.
Right. Yeah.
And so all I did was put myself in situations and relationships where I got more pain, more hurt,
Mm-hmm.
more disillusioned, more disappointed. And I realized that I couldn't live my life this way,
Mm-hmm.
constantly thinking the other person was going to fix everything. I learned that if nobody else was going to love me the way I wanted or I needed, I had to do that for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Around this time, I started healing from my own childhood traumas. I
Mm-hmm.
started working on my relationship with my parents,
Right.
any kind of childhood dysfunctions. I started to entertain the idea that the problem wasn't everybody else
Right.
or, every partner I thought that had a commitment issue. I thought it was always they had the issue. And I
Mm-hmm.
was often making excuses for that. I discovered through my own work that, hey, it's not them, it really is me. And it was one of those, like, in the movies, breakthrough moment where it's like, oh my God, it's not them, it's me. So it was that
Right.
realization, I think, that unlocked a lot of healing and a lot of understanding for me. And I stopped focusing on everybody else and started learning about myself. I started to question, why do I behave a certain way? Why do I push people away in my relationships? Why do I sabotage? I basically started to, you know, understand and heal a lot of my negative relationship behaviors. I started to
Mm-hmm.
see that a lot of these issues were starting with me. And
Right.
as I got to know myself better, as I started to love myself more and heal the parts of me that I wanted to hide, that I,
Mm-hmm.
rejected, didn't want to see, as I started to take ownership and responsibility, I noticed that I started attracting a different kind of person into my life. It
Correct.
started with friendships. I noticed that, the kinds of friends I attracted were just better people, better
Mm-hmm.
quality.
Mm-hmm.
They were more loving. They were not backstabbing. They were not, ghosting me when I needed it.
Right.
My relationship with my parents started to get so much more smoother, easier, more beautiful. And most importantly, I started to almost magnetically attract men that
Mm-hmm.
I found, wow, this is the type of guy I would settle down with, or
Right.
this is a guy who's really prioritizing me. And I started to experience things in relationships that I had never experienced before. And I
Yeah.
said, oh, I guess if I love myself more, they will
Mm-hmm.
love me more too. If I respect myself, they will respect me because it all starts with me. And that was really now the approach that I started to bring not only into my own relationships, but to every single woman I was coaching,
Mm-hmm.
getting similar results where, the relationship with ourselves was starting to set the tone for every other relationship we were having in our lives.
Mm. So beautiful. Such a testament to what can change when you begin to prioritize yourself. And hearing all of that, and I know the women that listen to the show and men too are on journeys, right? We come here because we're learning, we're expanding.
Yeah.
And yet those concepts for a lot of people still feel very foreign. So let's start there and then we'll talk about the hidden spaces. How did you get down to those spaces? Like you talked about healing and identifying and learning to love yourself, but what did that look like really?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, my healing journey, Danielle, was parallel to this falling in love with myself.
Mm-hmm.
The more I started to read books, let's
Yeah.
say, about healing, or I was listening. At that time, we didn't have podcasts,
Right.
but I was listening to different speakers. I remember when I started my journey, The Secret had come out.
Right.
So I was seeking information everywhere I could at that time,
Yeah.
where I was learning more about, myself, or where, behavior patterns come from. I was learning, I was soaking things in. And then from the information, I said, well, if this is the case, then now I want to experience this kind of healing or that kind of healing. And I
Right.
started to seek out things like clinical. I started with hypnotherapy. So I did a little bit of hypnotherapy. Then I found something called theta healing. I was doing Reiki. I basically became a kind of, I would say, almost like a junkie, where anything
Yeah.
that was personal growth, development, and healing, I wanted more of it. And as I went through these different types of healings, inner child work being,
Right.
I think, the most profound for me when it came to my relationship with myself and self-love, I noticed, that different aspects of my life started to heal. I started to
Right.
feel better.
Mm-hmm.
I started to notice I wouldn't get as angry when
Right.
I was working on some of those childhood wounds. So a lot
Right.
of work that started with my experiences in childhood, I
Mm-hmm.
think, is where I felt it unlocked the most healing in the area of love.
Right. Well, so you just
So
leaned into yourself,
I
right?
just leaned in,
Yeah, you
you
leaned
know.
in and said, I'm going to get curious and I'm
Mhm.
going to work through these things, which it is really the path, right? It's the path for everyone, regardless of what has happened in your childhood or what has happened in your love relationships. Curiosity, being willing to face yourself, the events, making room for grief, right? Whenever we realize that there's things, and
Yeah.
and these are sort of the recipe for
Yeah.
loving ourselves.
Absolutely. And I want to
Mhm.
add one more thing, Danielle, is it's not just being curious about the information, the processes, the
Mhm.
different, healing modalities or so on that we can find outside of us, but also getting really curious about, why am I reacting this way? Why
Yeah.
am I behaving this way? So I
Yeah.
started to question, I started to unpack all these emotions that I was so used to hiding,
Mhm.
not addressing. So I think being curious both ways
Sure.
is a great place to start.
Mhm.
And I've also noticed that when you start to ask these questions and start to get curious, the right things find you, right? I'm sure you agree with
Always.
this.
Yes,
It's like
always.
you hear the podcast that tells you about something that you need to do. You read a
Mhm.
book that someone recommends to you that changes your life, like
Right.
it's almost like the universe starts bringing you exactly, the steps you need to
Yeah.
take to go forward in your own healing journey.
Yeah. An action, right? So with the curiosity becomes the action point where you're actually listening to the self. You are not rejecting everything that comes into the path, but instead putting action into it. And it is how we begin to create change. Obviously, action is
Yeah.
change. So as you do that and you begin to realize there is this space where more is coming into my life, and you begin to recognize what it once was, having in my life as far as a partner is shifting. And I know you're coaching women on this now. So kind of help us identify, what do we need to be looking for outside of ourselves? Say we've already done that work. Where are kind of our blind spots?
Yeah. That's a really good question, Danielle, because I think this is what's going on for a lot of people is we
Hmm.
have blind spots. I think that really is the problem. We
Hmm.
think we've healed. We think we've done the work. We think we've forgiven. And yet, when I take a client in who's come to me saying, I'm good, I've been doing all the work, I'm ready,
Right.
and then we start working, I find out that they've actually been holding a lot of trauma or baggage that they haven't released. So
Right.
I think that the easiest way to check if you've done the work, if you are in fact ready, is to look at how easy it is for you to meet people that you connect with.
Mm.
And if it's going for you, as in you're, people are coming to you, or you're attracted to the right kind of people,
Yeah.
or dating is easy, almost
Hmm.
effortless for you, then I would say you've done the work, you're ready. It's just a matter of time.
Right.
But if there's a lot of stress in your love life, if you are frustrated, disappointed, if you're upset, if you are impatient, if there are a lot of negative emotions and it isn't an easy process for yourself, then to me, that means that there's still work to do.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of my clients and students, they know me for this because they're like, Sanaya, you always say there's work to do, and you're
Right.
always right, because we start working and we find stuff. So if it's easy for you, you're doing great. But if you're struggling, that's probably telling you you've got some love blocks that are
Mm.
getting in the way.
Let's break down those love blocks because I agree with you 100%, right? Your life shows you what's happening inside. Just like if you
Mm-hmm.
walk into your home and there are piles and messes everywhere, we can look at perhaps maybe we're feeling a little piled and messy inside.
Yeah.
And if we are having turmoil in every single corner of our lives, maybe there's something that's happening and active within us. Our life is a mirror. Now, let me say this because I hear a lot of people that I work with going, wait. You're telling me all the time in session that it's not me, it's the people I'm around. And so now you're saying that there's something. And I say, well, what are we working on? Right?
Yeah.
How are we looking at the reflection of our lives? Sometimes we do need to look at the experience that we've created in our previous mess versus where we are. But what are
Yeah.
these hidden blocks?
Okay, so it all started, Danielle, when I started working with women, and love would be kind of 80% of the
Hmm.
work I would end up doing. And of course, I told you my story where I thought the
Hmm.
commitment issue was everybody else, turned out to be me. I saw that pattern show up quite a few times
Yeah.
with the women I was working with, but I also saw a couple of other patterns. And after working with over 5,000 women, I figured out there's about five hidden love patterns that
Mm-hmm.
show up with many of the people that I work with.
Mm-hmm.
And they end up repeating this pattern in their life with their relationships. Sometimes it's not even just with their love life. It shows up, at the workplace, with their
Right.
friendships, and even with their parents. So let me tell you about these five different kinds of love patterns.
Yeah.
The first one is the commitment phobe, like me. So you attract partners who are emotionally unavailable. You
Mm.
push away the ones that actually care about you.
Right.
You think that they're the problem, but actually you're the one who's afraid to be in a relationship.
Right.
You're trying to avoid getting hurt or abandoned or rejected, which is probably something that you experienced with love in childhood,
Right.
more likely than not with your parents. And
Mm-hmm.
so you avoid commitment, though you want commitment. The second one is the people pleaser. You
Yeah.
think the only way to be loved is if you keep pleasing the other person. It's like you're
Right.
trying to earn their love. So you change yourself to be the kind of person they want you to be. You're constantly seeking their approval, but you lose yourself along the way. And
Mm-hmm.
as a result, because you have no sense of self, your partners tend to take you for granted.
Mm.
Sometimes they'll betray you. They will, disrespect you, not prioritize you. And so that's what you experience. The
Right.
third one is something I call the runaway bride. You
Mm.
believe deep down inside love is hard, it's painful, it's risky. You've probably had a lot of painful relationships. So even though you want love, you want a relationship, you actually keep running away from it.
Right.
You keep thinking that the person you're with is going to break your heart, is going to let you down again. So you avoid love and you don't get vulnerable or intimate with the person. You
Mm.
kind of close yourself off, you wall yourself off. You're trying to protect yourself. And
Right.
so the closer your partner wants to get to you, the further you want to get from them. So you sabotage your relationships.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Next one is the caretaker. This is where other people's happiness is your responsibility and you put their needs above your own. It's a little bit different from the people pleaser because the caretaker is usually taking care of either their parents or someone else that's important to them.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they're taking care of the family's finances or their siblings. They basically feel like somebody else's needs are more important than my own. They might be taking care of their own children.
Right.
Okay. You might be, divorced and, well, I can't have a partner because I have to take care of my children. So there's always a reason to take on somebody else's responsibility or happiness and push yours aside.
Right.
You believe love is sacrifice. Like love is something that you give to someone else, but not to yourself. And you always attract partners you have to take care of because your need is to take care of other people. So you'll attract these partners you have to take care of, but then they might not need you anymore. Maybe they're going through a rough time. You're there for them and then they get over it and suddenly they don't need you anymore. So they leave you. Right. So you tend to attract people who won't stay in the relationship for forever, for the long haul. And finally, we've got the memory chaser. This is where you keep holding on to the past. It could be like the one that got away, an old relationship, and you think that you'll never love somebody the way you love that person. And so you want to move forward, but you keep looking back and you're stuck in these like, what if I'd done this? What if it had worked out? And so you don't give new love a chance, constantly comparing it to the past partner or the past relationship. And so these 5 different sort of love patterns, I call them love blocks, they become kind of easy to spot when you know what you're looking for. And they cause you to get stuck in the same kind of relationships over and over again, never actually finding the right person or the one.
I mean, it all sounds like trauma responses, every single one of them,
Really?
right? So from your perspective, because from my side of the table, it sounds like a lot of those can stack on top of one another. So do you identify that maybe we're a memory chaser, but we're also the caretaker?
Yeah. So either I find the person I work with, and I actually have a quiz that helps people figure this one out. Either you have one dominant one, Danielle, or you have like 2 that are competing with each other.
Right.
But definitely I see 2 that tend to be stronger, more dominant than the other ones.
Okay.
And what's interesting is the journey of healing, the journey of overcoming these blocks, whether you have 1 or 2 major ones, looks a little bit different based on the type of pattern you're recreating in your life. And that's why it's so important to understand, what kind of a block do you have? Because, for example, if someone is a memory chaser, right? They need to do a lot of work on cutting the cord. Right. They need to release regret. They need to get closure and release the past baggage. And they need to see the past for what it was, not what they've been making it out to be.
Right.
And so, of course, that goes deeper than just the past relationship, right? It goes to all these other experiences that they're still holding on to from the past. Right. And so each one kind of opens Pandora's box into a different type of healing, as I'm sure you understand, having worked with a lot of this yourself.
So if we identify, you're probably listening, ladies and gentlemen, and you're like, oof, that's me. How do we begin to recognize how these behaviors are showing up?
Yeah. So again, I'll give you my example where I had this kind of aha moment and I was like, oh my God, it's not them, it's me. I am the one with the commitment issue. So the first thing that happens is you stop blaming others. And you stop thinking, it's everyone else's fault or that the universe is just, dishing you out the worst experience. So basically you take your power back from the situation of being the victim of these negative situations, right? So now it's like, I take ownership. It's me. It's my responsibility. This is what I'm creating. Well, let me ask the next question. Where is this coming from? Why do I do this in my relationship? Where did I learn this? Okay. And what am I trying to protect myself from? So now you start asking questions, that that need to be answered through the inner work that you do. So whether you work with a therapist or a coach, this is the kind of work, the trauma work, the inner child work, the relationship work that you need to do, the baggage you need to release. And I do very much recommend that people work with somebody else because, as you said earlier, we all have blind spots.
Yeah.
So you might get the realization, you might, say, hey, I get it. This is what I'm doing, but you need help for someone to help you release it. And that is, the more important work. I want to say the understanding, the recognition that you have these patterns and they're yours. They're not somebody else's, they're yours, is like opening the door, but walking through the door is doing the work you need to do. Every time I work with someone and do the work, their reality starts to change. They attract different people. They behave differently. Yeah. They respond to partners or dates very differently. And that's what changes their experience.
It's so interesting because you said, you got to get out of the victim mode and into acceptance. That is a very difficult thing for a lot of people to do. And I want to say this because I think it's really important. It's one of the things that I hear the most often when somebody first comes in and they're starting their journey is, how long is this going to take?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, it is. And I will often say, that depends on you, your commitment to it, the work that you're willing to do, and how willing you are to step out of your own way.
Yeah. When I started my journey, Danielle, I didn't love myself and I had a lot of different challenges in my life. I didn't set out to find a partner, but I did know that I was very disappointed with my love life. It took me about 4 years to get from a point of just discovering that these tools are out there and, learning about it to actually getting to a point where I found the person that I am now, married to for 14 years, 3 kids later. Yeah. But it took me a month and a half from the day I realized I had a commitment issue to take ownership of that for him to ask me to marry him. And I hadn't met him at that point. So I remember the day where I said, oh my God, it's not them, it's me. Right. And 2 weeks later, I go to a wedding, unexpected, met a guy there. And we spent 4 days at the wedding because, Indian weddings are like 4 days long. Yes. And we're on the dance floor all the time. So what we did is we just danced all night. Right. But we had a connection. And a couple of days after the wedding, I knew I'm going to marry this guy. It was just this like gut feeling because I had done so much work at that point of knowing myself. And I was like, oh my God, I think I'm going to marry this guy. I just knew it. And a couple of weeks later, he flew down. I was living in Dubai at that point. He flew down to see me. We spent a week together. And I know this sounds totally insane, but he asked me to marry him at the end of the week. And I had no doubt, no hesitation. It was like a full body, yes, absolutely. I know I'm going to be with you. And we were married 5 months later, shortest relationship in my life. And also the easiest, the most natural, the most effortless relationship I've ever had. Yeah. So I do believe that you may have done the work maybe for a year or even years. Because of course I'm talking about like 20 years ago. Yeah. Right. When I went on my own journey was a really long time ago. Things have changed a lot since then. They have. Today we have love coaches, dating coaches. We have people who actually can guide you through this specific process. Right. Back then, we didn't know what we needed to heal or how we were to, heal our relationship stuff. I was just on a journey to do all kinds of healing and to learn more. And I wanted, to soak in more knowledge. And this is how I left my corporate career, right, to become a coach and a healer. And I blend a lot of healing with my coaching work, which is how I also grew as a person. And so I find that when you have a specific goal, like you want to meet your partner, you want to find love, then you find someone who is an expert who can actually help you get there. Right. And then you can actually accelerate the process. You don't have to take 4 years or, as long as you think it might take, you can be, as you said, ready, and it can happen anytime. Sometimes in the middle of the work you're doing, maybe after that, maybe you need just some time to absorb everything. It's a little bit different for everyone, but I do know that when you do the work, you get there. Right. Let's talk about that. So
we've done the identification. We understand, right? We're opening ourselves up to change the behavior. What does that look like as far as you coaching someone? Like
Yeah.
what are we gearing towards?
So, when I work with my clients, I have a very structured process
Mm-hmm.
because I think that you can't learn to love yourself if you haven't healed all your baggage. So I
Sure.
usually get in with a lot of the releasing your past, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's like mother, father wounds, I call it
Yeah.
relationship templates, love blocks, inner child trauma. So I do a lot of work on releasing.
Mm-hmm.
Then I work on loving yourself, self acceptance, dealing with fears kind of in the present and the now. And
Right.
then the third part of the work I do is really being clear about what you want and manifesting that. So I do these
Mm.
powerful soulmate manifestations. It's a little bit different depending on what a person comes into our sessions with. Some
Right.
people have heavy inner child trauma, some people have really bad relationship experiences. So of course, we focus on what is specific to that person. Now, what does it look like as we start doing the work? So let's say we've done a session on fear.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All the fears of what would happen if you did get into the relationship. That's somewhere in the middle of the work I do with my client.
Mm-hmm.
And when they complete a session with me, they experience or they come back and tell me, Sanaya, I feel so much more relaxed
Mm-hmm.
about going on a date. I feel like my brain's not going crazy with all
Yeah.
the things, that could go wrong, or I'm
Yeah.
not expecting this person to screw me over like the
Right.
last person. Suddenly their thoughts have shifted.
Mm-hmm.
They're, you know, almost like their default setting of how they were behaving and showing up in their life tends to change. So I say that the work that I do with my clients helps them show up differently,
Yeah.
react and act differently, and respond to situations differently.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Mm-hmm.
more likely to walk away from relationships where they're not respected, or they know right from the beginning this is not what I want. I help them
Mm-hmm.
create a very clear filter of what kind of person they know they want to be with. And when you're so specific and so clear, you're going to say no to everybody who doesn't fit, what you really want. You become just very discerning. You become very clear. You don't waste any more time.
Right.
And you stop settling, right? Because now there's this confidence
Right.
and this possibility in your mind that you can have everything you want. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, Danielle, just in the last week, so over the holidays, I was in Dubai for for the holidays, and one of my clients had her engagement and she invited me to come to her engagement.
Mm-hmm.
Her partner lives in London, she's from a different place, and they had their engagement party. And so I was there at the engagement party, and it was just
But
like, wow, we've worked together and look at this now. A
mm-hmm.
week later, on New Year's Day, I found out that another one of my clients got
Beautiful.
engaged.
Mm.
And then I come back to work, and my first client back, who's also, I'm doing the same kind of soulmate, I call it soulmate magnet work with her. And she's like, Sanaya, I know that I'm going to be with this guy. The
Mm.
last session we had, they were just still dating, getting to know each other.
Right.
And first session back, for the year. And she's like, this is it. I know it. We haven't even finished the program, but she was
Right.
so confident and clear that this is who she was going to be with. And this is really what we're working towards, is having
Mm-hmm.
confidence, getting to that point where you are happily ever after with someone,
Right.
loving yourself so you know what you want and not settling for anything less than that.
Mm. I mean, it's a recipe and a blueprint, not only for life, but most certainly for connection and relationships, right? When we drop what has happened to us and we start thinking about what is it that I'm wanting to create, the mind shifts, right? It's the way that the mind works. We're giving an instruction to the brain and we're telling the brain, look for these things and filter out, like you said, everything that is not that. And your brain is the supercomputer that does as you tell it to do, right? It's either in charge of you or you're in charge of it.
Yes.
That's kind of the truth of the matter. So, as you build this blueprint, what happens for those women that are in relationships that are falling apart or they're not exactly what they want them to be? How can we begin to identify how these blocks are showing up there and kind of start course correcting if we want to stay within this relationship?
Absolutely. So the first thing is if you are in a relationship, you're not happy, you're not getting what you want, right? This is not working out. Then I do invite you to take the quiz that I have. I do have a
Mhm.
love blocks quiz, and it tells you right away if you're operating from a block. And this is
Mm.
if your love life is not where you want it to be.
Right,
Obviously, if you're in a good relationship, you have no need for that. But if you want more, if you want better, if you want to be happier, then take the quiz.
right.
The quiz will show you what is going on, like what are the patterns in your life.
Hmm.
And that already kind of guides you to understand that, hey, there's some work I need to do, and this is the kind of work I need to do.
Right.
And if you just start there, I really do believe that the right kind of support and help comes to you, but you have to take that first step. You have to
Hmm.
set the intention that I want to fix this. I want to work on myself, right? You have to kind of put that thought out there and take action that feels like it's aligned with what you want, whether
Hmm.
that is getting support and help for an area that is a struggle for you, or reading more and learning more, or talking to someone who can help you get a little bit more clarity. All of
Right.
this are different levels and forms of taking action. The
Hmm.
key is not necessarily what action you take, but just that you do take action and you
Right.
keep taking action until whatever it is that you want, that you arrive at that it
Right.
comes to you. And like we said right in the beginning, Danielle, if your life isn't the way you want it to be, if you don't have that
Hmm.
amazing, loving relationship, then there's work to be done. So keep
Right.
working until you have what you want.
Yeah. So important. One of the things that I will have people do, especially women that are coming in and they're saying, I love my husband or my partner, and I really want our relationship to work, but it's just not working. And I don't know what changed, right? I'll often say, well, perhaps you did. And we have to begin to look at that. Are you the same person that met that person, 20 years ago? No. What has come up for you and what are the key factors that aren't working? And then tracing that behavior backwards and looking, how has that impacted the partnership?
Yeah.
Or is it just fairly atypical that the relationship just isn't the priority right now because you're busy with the kids and baseball practice and blah, 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 right? Like, is that the case? And then shifting into a deeper priority, certainly. Do you work in that space as well?
I do. I do have many of my clients coming to me where things in the relationship have changed,
Mm-hmm.
or they are in the middle of a relationship that they don't really want to be in any longer.
Mm-hmm.
So there are different situations, but they are in a partnership.
Right.
So what I've found in working with those clients, it's the same thing. There are
Right.
love blocks.
Yeah.
They're a little bit more subtle because now they're in a relationship, and clearly
Mm-hmm.
they've been able to get that far that they're
Yeah.
in the relationship. Now, what's interesting for me, and this is something I have experienced with every client that I've coached in this way, is all you need is one partner
Mm-hmm.
from that relationship to come to you and start working. So I almost never work with the partner of my client. I
Mm-hmm.
work entirely with my client, and as they shift and clear whatever are the blocks within them that are not allowing them to have this loving partnership, with who they're with, but whatever is getting in the way, we can address that. And again, it goes back to other experiences that my
Mm-hmm.
client has had, either with their parents, with family members, with their childhood, whatever it is coming from, we do need
Right.
to address that. And when we clear that, what I've seen is my the partner of my client starts to behave differently with them,
Mm-hmm.
but actually they're the one really behaving differently because they've
Right.
done the healing work and the partner's just responding to that.
Right.
And so I've seen relationships that were, pretty much falling apart, on the rocks, turn into these beautiful loving partnerships with the
Mhm.
work that you do, even if it's just one person who does that work.
Yeah. I've seen the exact same thing. When you begin to change, the relationship changes, the partners are responding differently. It's sort of one of those things for myself that I'll always, when couples are coming in, because I will work with them individually and then together as well. I'll say, look, I have a really good track record on keeping couples together. I'm going to ask that you don't break that. So that means you have to do the work,
Yeah,
right? So
absolutely.
and sometimes look, sometimes the relationship does need to end for everything to be healthy.
Yeah.
However, most of the time, the things that get in the way are the past, and then just the thought patterns of having that victimhood, situation going on in the thoughts and the emotions. And then just also not finding appreciation for what is present.
Yeah. The gratitude,
Yeah,
the
big time.
recognition, right?
Hmm.
I also do find that a lot of people don't want to do the work because they think their partner is the problem, and
Yeah,
that keeps them from getting the help that they need. Like they
right,
think, well, what purpose will it serve for me to go work with someone because he's the one,
right.
or she's the one, and I
Hmm.
can't change that. So they never do the work thinking that the other person is always the source of
Yeah.
their misery, right? And I
Hmm.
think that is probably the biggest block to couples or even just one person being
Right.
able to heal what they need to heal. Because for me, personal accountability is
Uh,
the one thing that has
mhm.
served me very well,
Yeah.
served me really well, but also every single person that I have worked with, that
Yeah.
when they bring in personal accountability for everything happening in their life, even though it seems like it's outside of them,
Yeah.
that gives them the power and the ability to make changes.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give a little example in that too, because clearly, I know all of these things. And, my partner, my husband, has to, deal with somebody who can diagnose his behavior in 5 seconds. Poor guy. Right.
Yeah.
And so, even when we do our own healing work, which we all have to do, I've done it myself, we have to understand that sometimes those things come back up. So, a very good example of something so micro, because relationships are not broken in the big, huge things, they're broken in the
Mm-hmm.
micro experiences that add up
Yes.
and stack up, right? One thing for me, our schedule is insane. And so, like, I'm cleaning and I want everybody to help, and you're not helping the way that I want you to, right? There's that
Yeah.
perfectionism piece to it, and getting upset and being like, I never get any help around here, blah, blah, blah. Right. So feeling that boil up, and I then have to reel it back to the work and go, my agenda isn't always everybody else's agenda. Right.
Yeah.
So those are pieces of accountability. Like, how am I showing up that's creating the environment and perhaps not getting the feedback from the partner or even family, friends, whoever that I am hoping to get?
Completely. Like
Yeah.
I am also in a relationship where I have to stop myself time and time again from
Yeah.
pointing the finger at the other person and recognizing, wait a minute, it's not them,
Yeah.
it's me. So what
Yeah.
am I creating? Why am I behaving this way? Where is this
Hmm.
coming from? So again, going back to asking those curious questions and
Yeah.
trying to, take myself out of the drama of the situation, the emotion of the situation, and
Yeah.
just really laying out the whole situation and seeing it for what it is.
Hmm. Facts always before the emotion, and then we can get down to the experience. So
Yeah.
once we identify, right, maybe I'm creating the environment. I need to do the work. I'm doing that. I know my blocks. I'm showing up. I'm ready to get into this magnet of a relationship. What should I be looking for to create a solid relationship? And of course, this is generalized because it's going to be different for everybody else's experiences.
100%.
But what am I looking for?
So for me, I always tell my clients that love yourself the
Hmm.
way you want someone else to love you.
Right.
Treat yourself the way you want to be treated.
Mm.
Okay. Give yourself the respect, the attention that you want somebody else to give you. So
Hmm.
really, as you started this, this episode about being the mirror right?
Mm-hmm.
So mirror with yourself the kind of relationship you want with your partner.
Right.
And the more you love yourself, the more your partner will love you.
Mm-hmm.
So it really
Mm-hmm.
starts with that. One of the things I teach my clients is your self-love language, because we talk a lot about, your love language and how you love the other person and,
Mm-hmm.
how you receive love from the other person. But I think what we're missing is our own self-love language. What
Yes.
do I need to do to show myself love in a way that I can receive it? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so for me, when I've worked really hard and I'm just exhausted from really some big project or something I've accomplished, I know that I need to reward myself
Right.
because my love language is gifts.
Right.
And so I'll get myself maybe a spa day. I'll gift
Mm-hmm.
myself a spa day. I'll buy myself something. I will give myself some kind of reward. And it could be as simple as, sleep in the
Right.
next day. Right. But I need to show myself some form of appreciation and
Yeah.
recognition for the
Yeah.
work I've done. That's my love language.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I need to do is give myself quality time because that's my
Yeah.
other way of receiving love. And that means I need to be by myself
Right.
somewhere, somehow. Okay.
Yeah.
And so as I can respond to my own emotional needs, I'm less dependent on somebody else to do that
Mm-hmm.
for me.
Mm-hmm.
And now I bring myself into a relationship where I'm just happy to be with someone who loves me and to spend time with
Right.
the person. And I don't need anything from them
Right.
because I can give it to myself. And if they do give me a lot more than that,
Yeah.
great. I will receive it with gratitude, with
Yeah.
grace, and with appreciation, but not because I think I'm entitled to it from my partner. And I think that,
Mm-hmm.
brings a completely different type of energy into the relationship where you're both kind of supporting each other and loving each other without
Yeah.
taking anything away
Yeah.
from each other.
I love that you said, because I'm not entitled to it. One of the biggest things that I often tell people is love is earned through action and that co-creation that's happening between the two of you. So huge, huge to
Yeah.
understand. Just because you're in a relationship does not mean that you are behaving in a way that you're entitled for that feedback of love. If you're
Right.
showing up and we're creating this environment of health and well-being and connection, we're creating respect and we're,
Yeah.
the mirror effect there.
Yeah.
So important. What can we be doing right now to kind of help ourselves engage in relationships, whether that is with mom, dad, brother, sister, friends, other than the healing work? What are some maybe little tricks that we can create a more solid connection?
So I like to ask, how would you like to show up in this relationship with
Mm.
your friend, with your mother,
Mm-hmm.
father, with your colleague? How would you like to be? And
Right.
what is stopping you from being that way? Asking questions, assessing, just really getting a lot of feedback
Right.
from observing how you
Mm-hmm.
are and what makes you feel good, what doesn't make you feel good. Know yourself better. It
Right.
really is about understanding yourself better and being more intentional on how you want to relate to other people.
Mm.
Maybe there's someone you need to distance yourself from because every time you're around them, you don't feel good.
Right.
And maybe there's someone else that you feel like they inspire you and maybe redirecting yourself to spend more time with them. So just
Right.
being a bit more intentional, mindful, observing, asking questions, getting to know yourself better. I think that's a great way to start connecting with yourself on a deeper level and allowing yourself to be more present,
Mm-hmm.
to have more clarity about what you want. Those are great places to start.
Perfect. Any aha moments that we haven't really connected to in the conversation that you wish women or listeners knew?
Maybe I just want to drive the point home that the most important relationship you will have in your life is the one with yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that connection is the most valuable one. So
Right.
instead of focusing so much on the people around you and the connections around you,
Right.
if you could only spend that much more time on yourself,
Right. Right.
then I believe that you will be better for it. Your life will look and feel a lot better, and you will prioritize what truly matters, because
Mm-hmm.
ultimately how you relate to yourself is mirrored in every other relationship, right? So
Right.
the shortcut is work on yourself,
Mm-hmm.
connect to yourself, be with yourself, spend
Right.
more time there.
One big thing that I tell everyone is when it comes to relationships, if you can wrap the philosophy into your experience of, I want you in my life, I don't need you in my life, it changes the way we show up. There is that reciprocity, there is the gratitude, there's appreciation, respect, because I want you here. There's a space of opening. It's not a space of need, but instead this real true connection with someone, wanting them in your experience.
Yeah. I had a really interesting experience a couple of weeks ago, Danielle, where I ran into an ex.
Mm,
And my ex, it had broken up, like his marriage had broken up.
right.
And one of the first questions he asks me is, so are you with your soulmate?
Mm,
And I remember, nobody walks around asking you that question, right?
right.
Much less an ex. And so I just kind of was taken aback. And for a moment, I paused. And the words that came out of my mouth is, I found myself. I am my own soulmate. And
Mhm.
because of that, I know that whoever I choose to spend my life with
Yeah.
is the right person,
Hmm.
for me. So sometimes it's about really recognizing that you are your best soulmate,
Hmm. Hmm.
and that will allow you to draw the right person, the right people in your life to love you, protect you, support you,
Yeah.
and help you grow.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes back to those five masters, right? Mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, financial. When the jingle blocks are all stacked beautifully, meaning I'm living in that soulful aligned experience and something's not off to the side, the tower's not kind of falling down. We do have that aligned, soulful connection, not only with self, but with others. You
Yeah.
mentioned the quiz. Can you give us direction on how to get there and perhaps even some way to work with you if, we're doing this healing work and we also want to bring in the love experience as well?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for allowing me to share that. So, if anyone would like to take the Love Blocks quiz, you can just go to my website. It's sanaiyagurnamal.com/love blocks quiz.
Mm,
I'm sure, Danielle, you're going to stick it into the
it,
description.
it'll be right
And
there. Yeah.
thank you so much. And the other thing that I offer is you can just book a relationship clarity call with me if you'd like to
Mhm.
learn more. So it's just www.relationshipclaritycall.com.
Perfect. Relationships are the thing that all of us are, needing in our lives. We are humans that require connection. It's a basic need of ours. And if our connection with others is off, it again takes that Jenga block out, and we need it. We need it on all of those five masters. So, make it a priority, make it something that you really feel is perhaps the thing that you work on this year, whether you're in a relationship or you're seeking one. Connection is needed. So powerful. Any final thoughts before we kind of wrap up our time together?
Well, I just want to thank you. I've had such an incredible conversation with you because, we're definitely vibing on the same level.
Yeah.
We understand each other. And I think that allows the conversation to go so much deeper,
Hmm.
and fall on the right things that I believe the whoever's listening in needs to hear. So I want to thank
Right.
you for holding that space
Mm.
and for giving me this opportunity to share this with you. To everyone listening in, loving yourself is really the only thing you're here to do. Everything else follows from that. So thank you for sharing this space with me too.
Thank you for coming to this space and allowing it to be a space of growth, Right. So we end the podcast the same every time, and I hope you'll indulge.
Of
What are
course.
3 things that you are most grateful for right now?
Yeah. I'm grateful for my family
Mm,
who support me every step of the way. I'm grateful for this sense of connection that I feel with the universe, the source, however you like to perceive it. I have a very strong connection that I think keeps me steady no
yeah.
matter how stormy it gets.
Mm,
I'm very grateful for that, the discovery of that connection
yeah.
that has always guided me in my path forward. And I'm also very grateful for people just like you
Mm,
who help other people share their message and also provide the platform for people to learn more about how they can move forward in their life or how they can get unstuck
mm,
or avoid the struggle. So really want to acknowledge you for the work you do
mm.
and express gratitude for that.
Thank you. I honor it and I feel it. So thank you so much. Sanaya, thank you for your expertise and coming here to share with everyone. If you are looking to get your life together in this perspective, go to the show notes. All of the information will be their website, the quiz, everything, and ways to connect with Sanaya. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Who knew we could have so many relationship blocks? Man, there's a lot of things that can go wrong with us as far as how we present ourselves in relationships, how we relate to other people, and yet there are so many things that we can course correct and make right. I can't thank Sanaya enough for her true diving into what she teaches and how she serves women. If you're interested in that Love Blocks quiz, please head to the show notes. We also have a link to her website where you can dive in and learn more. I want to thank you so much for listening to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast. If you've enjoyed these tips for bettering your life and you're not already following me on social media, please do so at Get Your Life Together Girl on Instagram, TikTok, Clapper, Lemon8, YouTube, Insight Timer, Facebook, everywhere that we are social. You can also dive into my website at getyourlifetogethergirl.com where you'll find my blog, information about how you can work with me individually, and so much more. I want to thank you so much for being such a valuable part of this community. Until next time, be kind to yourself and others.